Hi, welcome to part two of looking at margin and leverage. This time we're going to be looking at how the link between leverage and margin works on the Bitmex exchange. And the first thing before we can do that is that you need to know that all of the futures trading that we do on the Bitmex exchange must be traded in Bitcoin. And in order to do this, you're going to have to deposit Bitcoin into the exchange. Now, I cover this in step 3 of the course, so if you want to know how to do this, then go and have a look at this video. But again, just to make you aware, if you've not seen that video, that you will have to deposit some Bitcoin on the Bitmex exchange in order to trade the Bitcoin or the XBT futures contracts. And then when you look at the trade calculator that I've created as well, we will convert everything back to a currency that you're more familiar with. But in this video, we're going to stick with Bitcoin because, again, it's not so much the Bitcoin values in one sense that we're looking at here. It's just the principles of how the margin and the leverage actually are linked. That's the key to this video. So let's look at an example. Let's say that the current price of Bitcoin is trading at $7,312, and that is the price for one Bitcoin. That is the price of Bitcoin in the open market, and of course the futures market is going to reflect this. So in order to actually trade the same amount as one Bitcoin, we would have to buy 7,312 contracts on the Bitmex exchange. One contract is worth $1. It's interchangeable. The problem is that we may not have $7,312 in order to place the trade. And if we attempted to do this, let's say, for example, we'd only got $500 worth of Bitcoin deposited on the exchange, then we are going to receive this error. And I also have the same thing built into the calculator that's in the TUCP software. It will tell you immediately that you have insufficient funds in order to buy or trade one complete values worth of Bitcoin, in this case, in this example, $7,312. So how do we get around this? The way to do this is with all margin trading, we can actually borrow Bitcoin from the exchange. They will actually say, well, if you put down 10%, we'll fund the other 90%. Of course, it comes with the caveat that if you let the trade drop below a certain level, they are going to liquidate it and they are going to take that margin off you. And if you don't implement certain money management and risk management techniques that I spoke about in part 1, then you can be exposed to far greater losses. But again, we'll cover all of that in this video and in the trading examples that we do as well. So just to recap here, that margin trading allows you to borrow from the exchange. They are basically plugging the deficit that you have. You don't have the funds in order to do it. And then when you do this, you will then be leveraged up on your actual trade. Simple as that. Now, Bitmex have two types of margin, which you will see in their order form. We'll look at this in a bit more detail later on, but I'm just going to cover it. The first of these is known as cross margin. And what the cross margin option does is use all of the available funds that you have available in your account. So what it will do, it'll take the whole amount, let's say it's that $500, it will set that aside in order for you to actually do the trade. And it would still allow you to actually trade the 7,300 contracts, but it would actually, as you see here, it would actually leverage this up to 100 times in order to do that. But the important point here is that all of the margin is set aside. So something that I prefer not to use. The second type of margin is the isolated margin. Now, isolated margin differs to cross margin, where cross margin uses all of the available funds in your account, and just uses a selected margin amount. And this is dependent upon the leverage that you choose to use or how much you intend to borrow. This is the one I prefer, and that amount of isolated margin is what you will actually use. You're not exposing the whole of your account, but of course, as ever, there is certain risks as well, which we will go into. So what we're looking at is the cost of the margin to control or buy and sell one Bitcoin. Remember, we're looking at 7,312, and to make things easier, what I've done here is round this down to 7,300. So what I'm saying is that I want to control one full Bitcoin. The price is currently 7,312, but if it drops down to 7,300, then count me in. To do this, I need to have in my account a full Bitcoin. The problem is I haven't, and you can see this here. You can see the cost to do this trade is one full Bitcoin. And if you look here, you will see that the amount available is nowhere near. You need one Bitcoin, and I've got 0.1, so I haven't got sufficient funds in order to trade it. So how do we get around this? Well, I can borrow from the exchange. It's not a problem. They will quite happily loan me the difference and the deficit in the actual account. So I can borrow from the exchange, and this is where the leverage aspect comes in. So again, just to reiterate here, you can see that I've got a cost of one Bitcoin margin cost. That's what the cost means here. It's going to cost me one Bitcoin to trade one Bitcoin values worth of futures contracts. The problem is I only have 0.128 in my account. So Bitmex allows me to do this. It will allow a small deposit to control a large amount of the XBT futures, which we've just seen. And they will allow you to go up to 100 times of leverage, something that I wouldn't recommend at all. There are certain things in advanced videos I'll show you, but for this part of the course, and if you're just learning about this, it's a definite no-no. Do not leverage up to 100 times on your first few trades unless you're absolutely right. You'll see why as we go through this video, because of the impact it will have on the funds that you actually deposit. So in this example now, let me just move on. Let me just see if I'm in the right place. So here, let's just recap. We've got a situation where the price is 7,112. I'm going to buy if the market drops to 7,300. But the problem I have, it's going to cost me the full amount of Bitcoin in order to do this, and I don't have the money to do it. So what I can do is leverage up on the account, and this means if I go to, for example, to 10 times leverage, you can see that it's only going to cost me now 10% in order to do this. But what's also important here, a very, very important point, because when I started to look at this, I thought, well, okay, if I'm going to borrow up to 10 times, does that increase my Bitcoin transaction also to 10 Bitcoins? And the answer is no. Look very carefully here, and you will see that the order value does not change whatsoever. It is still one Bitcoin. Where the leverage aspect comes in with Bitmex is that I can put down a 10% deposit. They will cover the rest, and then I can still trade the full value of one Bitcoin. And if you look around the internet, you will see a lot of people misunderstand this, thinking that they're actually going to trade 10 times the amount of Bitcoin, and that is not the case at all. You will still trade one Bitcoin's worth of futures contracts, not 10 times that amount. So a very important point there. And again, just to reiterate here, again, you can see that we're talking about the order value does not alter with the leverage. selecting leverage between 2 and 100 does not affect the order. So you don't end up with more Bitcoin, you still end up with the original amount of 1 that you set out to actually trade. And that value, of course, was 7,300 when the market obviously was trading at this level. Now, before we finish, there's no such thing as a free lunch. It is as simple as that. Whether you borrow anything, there always comes a risk. And how Bitmex handle this is very, very clever, actually. So let's just go through this so that you're aware of it. This is the most important thing here in this video. You've got to know what your risk and what you're exposing yourself to before you do anything. And if you don't like the risk, you don't do it. It is simple as that. So let's have a look here. As I said, there's no such thing as a free lunch. And what Bitmex do, they have this thing called a liquidation price. So before you put on a trade, you will be able to see what the liquidation is. And as the name implies, what they're going to do here is that if you don't put in any type of risk management yourself, i.e. a stop loss, or you don't get out of the market, and the market trades down to this price here, which you can see is 6667, so 6,667. That's using a leverage of 10. Then you are going to lose, when they close out that position, you are going to lose a significant amount on this trade. It is as simple as that. And again, I've written a calculator that works all of this out for you, even converts it to dollars, pounds, and euros. So you can see before you put it on. You need to know this. However, again, let me just reiterate this point. This is your worst case scenario. If you don't have a stop loss in, you're not monitoring the trade, and you just left the trade, having placed the trade, walked away, never looked at it again, and the market dropped to this price, this is where the damage to your account will come in, at the liquidation price. So you can manage, you can borrow money, no problem at all, borrow Bitcoin to take the trade, but you've got to be aware that if you don't take any mitigating action on your part to limit the risk, i.e. using a stop loss, then if the market drops down to this price that we've looked at here, then that position will be liquidated and you will lose that out of your account. So it's not as scary as it actually looks. It's really, really good because you're allowed to borrow the money. You can then do the trade and trade more than you have in your account, as long as you're aware of this liquidation price. So if you do nothing, as I've said before, and I'm going to keep emphasizing this because it's so important, if you do nothing, you walk away and leave the trade, then Bitmex, if the price drops to this level, will take that money from your account to cover this trade. They will not let you go into a deficit. They will not give a margin call. They will just liquidate and they will take the money from your account because you haven't taken any steps to stop this situation from occurring. And this is no different if you buy a house. And we saw in the part one with the example, if you put 10,000 down, you borrow 90,000, you don't pay the mortgage for whatever reason, eventually the lender will sell that house, and if there is a balance owed, they will come running for it. The difference here is that before you even get into that situation or get into arrears, Bitmex will liquidate the position and take those Bitcoins from your account. It's as simple as that. So let's have a quick look at an example before we actually conclude this video. Okay, I'm on the Bitmex trading platform and just go to here so you can see that in this account we have a balance of 0.1647 Bitcoin at the current price. That's around $1,300. Okay, so let's have a look at a real-time example on how this is actually worked out. The market's currently trading at 9269, as we can see down here. And what we want to do first, make sure we've got Bitcoin selected. That's the futures here. And the market's, let's say, trading at 9,238.5. So let's say that we want to buy this market if it drops down to 9,200. And at the moment, we've only got, in the quantity, we've only got $1 worth of Bitcoin, which is pretty pointless, really. So just for this example, what I'm going to do is to actually put in 9,200 contracts, which is also the equivalent of buying one whole Bitcoin. Now, you don't have to do this. You could actually go for half the amount or whatever the risk on your account. Again, when we look at the calculator, it will work out for you and tell you how much you are risking as a percent of your available funds, which is very important again. And then you can alter the contracts accordingly. But in this video, we're talking about the relationship between margin and the Bitmex leverage. So let's go with one-to-one on this at the moment, just for simplicity. So here we can see that we've got the cost of one whole Bitcoin, because we're going to actually buy one whole Bitcoin. And again, the cost on the short and the long side is exactly the same there. The order value is also one Bitcoin. So one Bitcoin's worth of margin for one whole Bitcoin to actually trade, or in this case 9,200 contracts. But the problem is, as you'll see here, we've not got enough money in the account to actually trade it. And when I click on buy, if you look at the bottom right of the screen, you will see that we get this message that says order submission error. Order could not be submitted. Total margin requirement of 1.0022 XBT is more than available balance of your account, which is 0.1647. So the problem is, we want to trade this amount, but we don't have the funds in our account to do it. Now, if I move to 2 times leverage, you will see that the cost now has halved. It's gone from 1 Bitcoin to half a Bitcoin, but the problem is it's still there's still not enough in the account to actually trade it. So I'm just going to keep moving this, and you'll see now it's a third, and then we go to 5 times. You can see it's a fifth of the margin required. But as soon as I go to 10 times, you will see that this is now 10% of the order, or of the margin. And there's the order value there of 1,000. So now we can see that the 0.1647 is less than the cost. So now we can actually place the trade. So I'm going to click on buy, and this brings up the order form here. So just to recap here, we've got an order to buy a whole Bitcoin's worth of XBT futures at 9,200. Our order value is still 1 Bitcoin. Even though we've gone to 10 times leverage, this doesn't change at all. The order value remains the same. We're not going to control 10 Bitcoin because we're using 10 times the leverage. We are going to be just putting up 10%. That's the difference there to what most people understand with regards to leverage. It doesn't alter the actual size. So there you can see the amount that we have to put up, which is far less than the 0.1647 that we have in our account. And again, you can see that here, that's underneath it. The position size after execution is going to be the same, 9,200 contracts, which is the equivalent of 1 Bitcoin. That's the price it will be trading at this point. The mark price I'm not going to discuss in this video. We'll cover that in a separate video. Again, what we're interested in is these 2 figures here. So at 10 times the leverage, if I were to leave my trade alone, walk away from it, not touch it, then I'm going to be liquidated in this position at $8,403. As you can see there, $833 below. And this is important because we're trading one whole Bitcoin, so we're getting dollar for dollar in the move. And this means that if I let this trade go to the market, to the liquidation price, I would lose $883 on this trade, which would be insane. As I said at the outset, we've got about $1,300 in the account. which is why we're allowed to trade on 10%. But if we were to walk away, not do anything, not have our own stop loss in place, not monitor the trade, then Bitmex, if the price dropped to this level, would close this trade out and we would lose approximately $883 on this trade. So this is where the risk factor comes in. It's having some sort of being flippant about trading and saying, well, it won't get down to there, that's $883 away, so I can just walk away and leave it there, it's all right, it's going to continue to go up. You must have a money management plan in place, a risk management in place, know exactly what you're risking, and then you can take measures accordingly. And of course, as I've always said, in anything that we've ever traded, is to not risk more than 3 or 4% of your account on any one trade, and preferably 1%. So this is the main issue when trading with Bitmex leverage, is that you don't take any avoiding action and you leave the position unprotected. Then you will be liquidated and then you will lose a lot of money. So don't do it. It's as simple as that. So whilst we're here, let's just go through some of the other leverage options as well, and you'll see when I click on 25 times, the stop gets closer. Now they're only going to give me 400 points because I'm borrowing more. So the more that you borrow, the closer you will find the liquidation. So now 217, and then of course if you go to 100, you will see only $122 away from where the price would be. So again, you don't want to do this. There you'll be risking 1.32. Sorry, not risking. The market would only need to move 1.32%, and you would be taken out. And again, when you look at the trading videos and step 4, where we look at putting it all together, you'll see that we have our own stop loss that we will place before going into a trade as well, so that again, we're always looking at the risk side of things and removing and mitigating this risk. Okay, so that's really it about the relationship to margin and leverage with Bitmex. It's not as complicated as it looks. You'll soon get used to it. And so I said before, I've actually written a calculator inside of the software so that it translates the what looks like hieroglyphics of Bitcoin currency into something you're more familiar with, US dollars, pounds and euros, so that you can actually see. So you have a good idea in the real world and something you're familiar with of how much you would actually be risking on the trade. Right, that's it for this one. If you have any questions, then please do let us know. And if you do struggle a bit, then go back and watch it again. I know it's a lengthy video, but it'll be worth it, because once the penny drops, you realize that it is a great way of actually being able to trade on Bitcoin volatility and take advantage of it by using the leverage that is actually offered. But you've got to understand the risks involved. Right, that's it for this one. As ever, thanks for watching. See you in the next one.